Okay, so this video is going up as unlisted. As you guys see, it's being recorded with my webcam instead of with my phone because this is kind of an update as to everything that went down with me yesterday. I know you guys have a lot of questions, but at the same time, I think I want to make this video because as a form of self-therapy, I suppose. So yeah, I'm going to tell you guys everything that happened, but I want to start at the very beginning because there have been some red flags, which in hindsight, I guess led to this whole situation. Because for the longest time, I was actually feeling uncomfortable around my manager. I could feel there was friction. Um, and yeah, I couldn't see it at the time. I had a feeling and I kept suppressing it. I kept telling myself it was all in my head. I was making it up, but in hindsight, I was kind of right. So yeah, in case you guys haven't heard it yet, I got fired yesterday. It kind of messed me up. It really did. It still is. I haven't quite recovered yet. I'm still, like I woke up this morning. After changing my alarm back to 9:30, I woke up. And I thought it was 7:30 and I had to go to work. And it really took me like about 10 seconds for my mind to kind of puzzle it all back together. Because I honestly thought that what had happened yesterday was like a bad dream or something. So I was like, oh wow, that was weird. But I have to go to work at 7:30. And then it just hit me. I'm like, wait, it's 9:30 and that was real. And I'm unemployed now. I got fired. So that really kind of tells me that my subconscious is still very much dealing with this. Um, but yeah, let me just tell you guys everything that went down. So I remember when I first started working there, like that first day slash that first week was honestly just like complete euphoria, right? I remember I got such a warm welcome from pretty much everyone. People would like walk into to the office to like welcome me in, introduce themselves. My team members from marketing, when I first started working together with them, they were super welcoming, and we had like amazing chats and stuff. And there was never any awkwardness of like me being new, right? They just instantly kind of like accepted me. And yeah, it was amazing. I remember thinking like, wow, this might just be it, like after three bad jobs, this fourth one is probably going to be the one for me, at least for a while now. um and then so the thing is, this, like, when I started working at the beginning of May, um this was right after the lockdown here in Belgium, so the roads were actually still completely empty. And I would always arrive at work at, I think it was 8:25. But one morning, I think like 3 or 4 weeks in, somebody had somehow managed to get into a car accident on empty roads. So I got into literally the only traffic congestion in the whole country because the radio said so. And I arrived at work later, but not late. Because I think I got there at like 8:35, 8:40ish, I think. So I was like, yeah, no big deal, because I think you were allowed to arrive at work up until like 9 or 9:30 even. So, I wasn't late. Um, and all of a sudden I get an email from a manager, and he's just like, hey, I expect everybody from marketing to be at work and, at their PCs working by 8:30. And I was just kind of like, whoa, okay. And then I told him, I'm like, hey, I did actually just get stuck in the only traffic congestion in the country, kind of like with a bit of a funny undertone. Um, and then he replied back to me in an email, and he just said, good rules make friends, which is a saying in Dutch that basically boils down to, hey, as long as you stick to the rules everything will be fine, we'll be fine. And I was just like, why would he say that? Like, this isn't a situation that I had any control over, that I could do anything about. Like, it was an accident. Like, what do you expect? So I remember sending that to my friend as well. I'm like, yo, like, what's up with this? And even she was like, what the hell, dude? But anyway, I moved on from that. I think the next, the next time like my second red flag happened was, I think around the talk. Because the thing is, up until then, we had been working in what we call the old building. And the thing is, with the old building, everybody ate at their desks because we didn't really have like the the space to like eat in a canteen, I guess. So we all ate at our desks. And I remember the first week I started working there, I asked my manager, I was like, hey, is it okay if I take my lunch at 1 p.m.? Because I just like having shorter afternoons. And he was fine with that. There was no issue. And then yeah, around the 2-month mark, we moved into the new building, and new company policy in that building was that we had to have lunch in the brand new canteen. So yeah, it was fine. So I start having my lunch there, same time as always. And about 1 week in, all of a sudden I come back from my lunch and I see an email in my inbox from my manager again. And this time he just goes, hey, I think you should start having your lunch a little earlier at like, let's say 12:45, because you're sitting all alone up there right now. And I just didn't really know what to say to that, because I'm like, I've never really been in a situation where a higher up intervenes in what is supposed to be like my personal time. Like, he shouldn't really try to exert his authority on me when it comes to something like this, right? So I didn't really know how to deal with that. So I kind of just went along with it because, you know, I was still on probation, by the way. So my probation period was going to be 6 months. And then after that, we were going to have an evaluation and, you know, see if I could get my permanent contract. So, you know, when you're on probation and you're trying to keep a job, you kind of just deal with things, right? So yeah, I went along with it and I just said, yeah, you know, I didn't expect it to be so empty by that time, but okay, you know, tomorrow I'll go have my lunch at 12:45. And then he sent an email back like, okay, but I don't just mean tomorrow, I mean forever. And again, it was just so passive aggressive, and I just didn't know how to interpret that. I'm like, why is he being like this towards me? And you know what the thing is? I always make the comparison in my head during times like these to kind of put things into perspective. And I kept thinking to myself, I was like, dude, if I was like a 40-year-old man, I highly doubt my manager would have had the guts to send an email to me like that. But I think the only reason he did that is because I'm a 26-year-old girl and I'm not very assertive, and he's just kind of power tripping, you know? So none of that was okay, and that was like my second kind of red flag where I was like, this is really weird and it shouldn't happen. But, you know, I went along with it. And I think that was around the time when in my head, I first started kind of feeling like I wasn't being treated the same as everyone else in the team. That was, yeah, it was around that time where I just started to feel like he might not like me as a person. And then, yeah, some time passes and I can't really shake this feeling. I even remember telling my mom about it. And she suggested, well, why don't you just take some treats, snacks to work? Because, you know, that always gets people like, you know, in a good mood and stuff. So I took a bag of Kit Kats to work. And it's funny because I remember he literally like, I had to force him pretty much to have some Kit Kats because otherwise he literally would not take any. So I had to pick up the bag and just go up to him and be like, hey, do you want a Kit Kat? And do you know how shitty it feels when you take something to work as like a gift, as a gesture, and it gets ignored? Like that feels like shit, dude. Um, so yeah, that was again that made me feel like something was really up, but I just kept telling myself, no, it's in my head, you know, I'm probably being paranoid about this. So I tried to really just shake that feeling, but it wouldn't go away. And in hindsight, I was right. Um, and then I think around July, August, the holiday period arrived. So what ended up happening is my manager took 2 weeks off. Then he came back for 2 weeks, and then he took another week off. And so the thing is, the first 2 weeks when he left this to-do list. And first of all, I did everything on the to-do list. I made sure everything on there was finished by the time he got back. But one of the things I had to do was like post a few social media posts or plan them in and stuff. So I made them, and I remember I showed them to my other marketing colleague who's been working there for like 2 years. So I trusted his judgment. I'm like, you know, if he's cool with it, it'll be fine. Yeah, he was okay with them, and I posted them online. But the thing is, normally I always show everything to my manager first, because he and this is kind of the origin of the problem as well. He micromanaged everything I did. He micromanaged everything I did. So every social media post that had to go up, I would write them up, I would send them to him, and then he would give his feedback. The thing is, that was one of the best things I did. Usually I wouldn't really get any corrections back from that. So that's why I was like, yeah, it's probably okay to just like, post them on him, because it's usually like one of my strong suits. But there was also other things, like I had to write newsletters, I had to write like make flyers and stuff. And when it came to those things, it was pretty extreme actually. He would make this draft and literally write the text, draw the pictures that had to go into it and stuff. So like the whole design of the newsletter or the flyer was on that draft. So all I had to do was literally just copy it, like just a carbon copy, right? And so that's what was taught to me when I started working there, and that's what I just kept doing according to what I was told and taught, right? And so yeah, everything that all of my tasks would always come from him, through him, because he would get all the emails from the company, and then if there was something that I could do, he would like send it to me and like tell me to do it. And then yeah, you know, like I said, he would make these like drafts and stuff. So, and in my eyes, I'm like, okay, well, this is what I have to do then. So, and I did everything, right? But the thing is, at the same time, I was actually also kind of replacing one of my other colleagues who was currently like gone because of a pregnancy. So the plan from the get-go was actually for me to replace her initially while she's out. And then once she came back, which is supposed to be in 2 weeks actually, I was to get like a brand new set of tasks, which also involved video editing. So in my mind, I'm like, this is all temporary, so I'm just gonna do what this guy tells me to do. You know, he micromanages everything down to every single word. So I'm just gonna do what I'm expected to do, and then you know, in September when this girl comes back, I'll finally do what I'm really supposed to do, which is like video editing and maybe some other things, right? So I wasn't really sure of my position at that point yet. Like, am I going to keep writing newsletters? To what extent am I going to be responsible for social media? I didn't really know any of that. So anyway, the 2 weeks pass. He comes back for another 2 weeks. But the thing is, in that whole kind of summertime, work slowed down a lot. Like, I'll admit, most of the time I didn't really have much to do. But the thing is, when you're used to a work schedule where, you know, all of your tasks are given to you by your manager, by your higher up, then, you know, when you suddenly stop getting things, it's like, well, I guess there isn't really much to do. So what ended up happening is I would spend a little bit more time on my phone. But, you know, here's the thing, right? I saw a lot of colleagues and stuff going around the office, having little chats with people. Some, like, to the point where they would sometimes literally sit down on an empty chair and just, like, have a chat about football or something with each other for like 10 minutes. And the thing is, I don't have an issue with that. I'm like, do what you gotta do, dude. I don't judge. There's people who would go to the toilet like 5 to 10 times a day. I never go to the toilet because I'm a germaphobe. So I'm like, I really try to avoid going to the toilet if possible. So all the time that I don't waste doing any of those things, I spend on my phone instead. So it balances out. It kind of boils down to the same thing. And so especially when I have nothing to do, I'm like, well, I'll just quickly check Twitter real quick and then, you know, get back to doing something maybe. So yeah, he comes back for 2 weeks, then he's gone for another week. And then after that 1 week, he's back again. And I think it was in that week that I got my evaluation again. So this was my third evaluation. The first two went really well. My manager was there. He was super happy about me. The third evaluation comes around, and it's with, what is it, the HR kind of replacement girl, because the original HR person was also on pregnancy leave. So it was someone else filling out for her. And so, yeah, the whole evaluation was positive. I have to admit, I did find it a little bit weird that my manager wasn't involved this time, but I was like, hey, not my problem. I don't organize this. So it goes really well. And then I think it was that same week where it was Friday at noon and everybody was already everyone had already left for lunch and it was just me and my manager. And so he was literally getting up to leave as well. So he kind of walks away and all of a sudden he turns back around, walks back to me, and he's like, oh, by the way, I noticed that recently you've been on your phone quite a lot and it's not work related. And then he just kind of says something along the lines of like, oh, that's not how it's supposed to be. That's not how any of this goes. And then he just walks off. Super passive aggressive. I literally could not say a single word. I was just staring at him, just shocked and panicking and scared because I'm like, why is this happening? What is happening? And that honestly was kind of the start of this whole kind of downhill period of time. Because I started feeling super uncomfortable around him and I could feel it. I kept feeling like this guy doesn't like me. This guy treats me differently compared to everyone else. I could feel it. And yeah, so what I did was last week, I literally didn't touch my phone. I kept it in my bag. I wouldn't look at it. I wouldn't even see it. I kept it in my bag the whole week, dude. And the thing is, my manager ended up using his phone or being on his phone a lot more than I was because I could hear it every time he puts his phone down. I can hear it touching the desk. So I'm like, he's literally on his phone more than I am last week. So yeah. So last week kind of goes by. I'm super uncomfortable. I remember last weekend I was feeling super shit about myself because of this whole remark about the phone thing. But and especially because I could feel how, like, I could feel those negative vibes. I've never really felt, there's not a lot of times where I can actually like feel how tense the situation is, but I did this whole week. And so my reaction, my automatic reaction to that is to literally just shut down even more. I figuratively try to make myself as tiny as possible in the room. Yeah. And so yesterday it was strange. I came to work, everything was fine. And then yeah, that's when it, like in the afternoon, that's kind of when everything started going downhill. But the thing is, what was weird that day was my colleagues, when they went into like lunch and stuff, so they go have their lunch at home. And usually what ends up happening is, they get up to go home and they literally look at everyone at the table and they're like, oh, see you after lunch. And today, both of my marketing colleagues didn't look at me. And I found that so strange. I'm like, why are they avoiding eye contact with me? And then, yeah, in the afternoon, I found out why. All of a sudden, I get a phone call from HR to the guy, and the guy tells me to go to his office. And at this point, my heart already sank, right? I'm panicking. My heartbeat is like 1,000, 1,000 beats a minute, and I'm like, holy shit, what's going? But I tried to be positive regardless. I'm like, maybe it's not that bad. So I go into his office, and he has this kind of sheet of paper in front of him with like 3 things written on it. And so he's just like, yeah, your manager hasn't really been very happy about the way things are going. And I'm like, oh my God, is this about the phone thing? Yeah, but I've changed my behavior. I'm literally not touching my phone anymore. And so he goes through the first thing and he's like, well, first things first, your manager thinks that you should give more input and just more suggestions when it comes to like all the marketing operations. And I was like, this was my first time hearing about this. So I'm just like, whoa, okay. And then I tried to defend myself. I'm like, yeah, but my tasks are supposed to change like 2 weeks from now, and I don't really know what I'm gonna keep and what's gonna go back to my other colleague. So yeah, there's a bit of uncertainty to me, so I don't really know to what extent I should give input. So he was like, yeah, okay. Then he goes to the next thing, and that was about the phone. And I defended myself again. I'm like, yeah, but he pointed that out to me last week, and I've put my phone away. I'm not even looking at it. I'm not touching it. It's in my bag now. So he's like, yeah, okay. And then and then the final thing that my like, you have to imagine this. My manager went to HR to tell them that I make typos. And I just sat there in disbelief. I'm like, no fucking way. So I tell the guy, I'm like, look, yeah, I make typos, I know. But, it happens when it's my own work. It's really hard to find your own typos. But like, I was literally correcting the website at that point. And I was picking out every single typo, every single grammatical and spelling mistake. I was picking them all out. I'm like, yeah, when it's somebody else's text, I can very easily spot everything. But when it's my own, it's very natural. This is super normal. You don't really see your own mistakes. And the guy at HR admitted it. He's like, yeah, this kind of thing happens to me as well. So yeah, that was kind of the end of the conversation. So I was just like, okay, this was weird, but maybe it was like some kind of evaluation. I don't know. So I walk back to my desk, and my manager sits in front of me, right? So I sit down and I can see him looking at me kind of like from above his monitor. I can see him kind of go like this. And I'm just like, why is he like nodding at me and looking at me? Like what does he expect me to say right now? And then all of a sudden he just goes, yeah, should we sit separately for a second? And I'm like, yeah, okay. So we went into the meeting room, and that's when shit really just hit the fan. I think we were in that room for about 30, maybe 40 minutes. It felt like an eternity to me, to be honest. But yeah. And he pretty much, like, he started scolding me. He pretty much came up with every single excuse he could come up with to basically prove that I'm a bad employee. So I literally, I opened up a notepad and I wrote down some of the things that I can still remember, because so much was said, and I tried my best to remember as many of the things that he said. But yeah, he basically started off by saying, by talking about the whole, like, you need to give more input thing. So he was like, yeah, I'm a very chaotic person. and I need people around me who can create order in the chaos. So for example, your other colleagues, you know, they constantly remind me of things that need to be done. They give suggestions and input themselves. They take initiative, you know, they get things done, and you just don't seem to do that. Like, you have to remember, at this point, I've been working there for 4 months. The other two colleagues he talks about have been working there for 4 and 10 years, respectively. And so I, like, at this point, I'm like in disbelief of what's going down in front of me. And so he's just, and then he just starts saying that I'm not creative and I don't belong in marketing. And, you know, like, apparently I'm not creative because I'm not giving any input and suggestions. But the thing is, and I told him this, I'm like, okay, but I interpreted this whole job and my position as something completely different, because you've been giving me all my tasks and I've been getting them done. And plus, on top of that, my tasks are temporary. They're going to change. And then he was like, oh, then there must have been some kind of miscommunication, blah, blah, blah. And then he starts saying that apparently I've been keeping him awake at night, that he's been thinking about this for, like, that he's been bugged by this for a very long time. And I'm like, dude, apparently I'm such a bad, problematic person that I've been keeping this guy awake at night. And then he said that, you know, like, he's way too busy to keep giving me tasks day in, day out. And I'm like, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, but that's what you've been doing this whole time. Like, what am I don't really know what I was supposed to expect then. Then, God, what else did he say? Oh yeah, and then he also said that, you know, he actually praised me very briefly. He was just like, you know, you've been doing everything that I tell you to do, and you honestly do a really good job. I can't complain. But I can't keep doing this. I can't keep giving you work. I'm too busy for that. I have my own work to do. I can't keep drawing or making all these drafts for you and telling you exactly what to do. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, like, so you're telling me that I'm doing my job. I'm doing my job very well. But then at the same time, like, you micromanage every single thing I do, and then you come back to tell me that none of this is supposed to happen. My mind was blown. I didn't know what to say at that point. So then he starts giving these, like, examples of how I could have given more input. He was like, you know, there's all these old, outdated flyers that honestly need renewing, but, you know, you never really take initiative. You could have done this. And I'm like, I don't even know which flies he's talking about, you know? I'm like, how am I supposed to know any of this? And then, I don't know, and then, you know, it started getting a bit weird, because then he was talking, he was saying something like, I've seen that you have your planner open on your PC, and yet you still never gave any suggestions or ideas to me. And at that point, I'm just thinking, oh my God, how did this guy know that my planner was open on my PC? He sits in front of me. How could he have seen this? And so that's the point where I realized this guy has seriously been keeping an eye on everything I do, both what I do on my phone, what I do on my PC. And here's the thing, this is when I puzzled it together, because the day he pointed out the whole phone thing to me, I went to lunch after it happened. I came back, and he was already done with lunch at that point. So he was already back at his desk. So I come back, and my monitor was moved. So we have a double monitor, and it's like on an arm, right? So I always kind of like put the two monitors like right next to each other, kind of like glued together. And that day I came back from lunch, and literally one of the monitors was moved like this, which has never happened before. Like, there is no cleaning crew that comes to clean in the afternoon. They only clean on like Fridays. There is no way in hell that monitor could have moved. So that's when I puzzled it together. I'm like, this guy 100% went through my PC while I was having lunch after this whole phone remark to see what else I'm up to. But yeah, so he just kept ranting on, and then he starts scolding me even more. like to the point where it almost felt like he was my dad or something. So he was just like, yeah, and I easily show my emotions. You probably noticed this as well. You'd probably noticed that I was in a bad mood. And then he was like, you know, you're 26 years old. It's not like you just graduated school. We're all adults here. You could have easily said something to me, like made a suggestion. And I'm like, dude, first of all, this has nothing to do with age. Second of all, if we're all adults, why didn't you come to me first? You're my superior. If you had an issue with me, why didn't you come to me first? Why are you expecting somebody who's been working there for 4 months on probation to take initiative while you're my manager? So, and then he kept getting into like the whole phone topic as well. And I'm like, yeah, but you said this to me. And ever since I've left my phone in my bag. But, you know, he wouldn't listen to it. It was all too late for him. And then he literally admitted, he literally said that when he saw me on my phone, he got triggered. It was like, yeah, when I saw you on your phone, it triggered me because I bust my ass off 8 hours a day, and it's unfair for you to then be on your phone for so long. And I was just like, holy shit. You're like, I'm not responsible for how somebody else chooses to work. You know, if somebody chooses to bust their ass off 8 hours a day, that's on you. That has nothing to do with me. Right? So, and then he's like, you know, you get paid to work 8 hours a day, that I shouldn't let myself get distracted, which is such an old school way of thinking. Like, we're not robots, you know, like everybody needs a bit of distraction. He was like, yeah, you know, if you're on your phone, that means you're either bored or you have nothing to do. And it's like, yeah, I had nothing to do because of this whole work regime that I thought was happening, was the standard. And also, I'm somebody who just needs breaks sometimes. I just need to, like, you know, shut out work for like 2 minutes quickly, just, you know, take a breather and then get back into it. That's not because I'm bored. It's just because that's how I function. And then, yeah, like that, like I said, it went on for about 30 to 40 minutes. And then the worst part of the whole thing was at some point he just went, wait. Because he kept telling me, he's like, keep this in mind in the future, keep that in mind in the future. You know, like, take note of this during your next job. And I'm like, why does he keep saying it like that? And at some point he then goes, wait, what did the guy of HR tell you? And I'm like, just this and that. And then he just goes, oh, so he didn't tell you that your contract has been terminated? And I'm like, no, he didn't say any of that. So then he went to check with HR. He was gone for like 10 minutes or something. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there in a meeting room all by myself, panicking. I'm losing it, right? And then he comes back all huffing and puffing, and he's like, oh, well, I don't really know what's going to happen, but I'm sure he'll get back in touch with you this evening. And then, yeah, we kind of went back to our desks. It was mega awkward. All of a sudden, I understood why my colleagues were avoiding eye contact with me, because they knew, obviously. And then, yeah, 5 p.m. came, and all of a sudden, people start to leave. My manager leaves at 5 p.m. And I'm like, this is literally such a like jerk move, right? Like, I still don't know what's gonna go down with me, and this guy just fucking gets up and goes home. I literally couldn't believe it. So as finally I turned to my other colleague, who was the only one still left there, and I'm like, you probably know, don't you? Because I was so sick of like I was so sick of this like imaginary wall that they put it like between us. I'm like, dude, why am I being treated like a villain all of a sudden by everyone in marketing? So I decided I was sick of it. I was like, you know, don't you? And he was just like, yeah, I picked up a few things, but like I don't really know all the details. I'm like, oh my god, this guy is like, you know. So yeah, I kind of tried to push him into giving his opinion, but he refuses to do so because obviously he's been friends with my manager for like 10 years. So I realized that I can't get this guy to really like speak his mind. So I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna go to HR and see what's up. Um, yeah, I have a chat with the guy of HR, and he's just like, it was probably awkward for you this afternoon, wasn't it? And I'm like, yeah, it was. So yeah, he just said, well, it's just the start of the week, which means your contract still runs until the end of the week, but I'm not gonna force you to sit there for the rest of the week, all awkward like. So we're just gonna pay you for the rest of this. We're just gonna end it here. This is your last day. But he was really kind about it. I could tell this guy genuinely felt bad for me. And then he also admitted that they made a mistake during my last evaluation, that that the HR person was supposed to get feedback from my manager and didn't get it. But also my manager clearly didn't give her any feedback, so it's kind of on both of them. So he was like, yeah, that's definitely our mistake. But then he said, you can always use my reference on your CV. I will never say a bad thing about you. And then he even tried to help me out. He was like, look, I know the director of this, like, what was it? This other company, not far from there. So he was like, I'm gonna try and get in touch with him. I don't know if they have any current job openings, but you never know. So this guy really felt for me. Like, I could tell he was genuinely trying to help me, and like he genuinely felt bad for what was happening. And then yeah, I went back to my desk. My colleague was still there, so I tell him what's up, and he just goes, "Whoa, I didn't expect it to go so quick." And so at that point, I'm like, I didn't say it out loud, but I thought, okay, so that means that he does know what's up. Because earlier he was like, oh, but I don't really know the details. I'm like, well, he clearly knows enough because he says I didn't expect it to be so quick. I'm like, so he knew that I was going to get fired before even I did. So yeah, I kind of pack up my things. And the whole thing, like, we kind of walked out the office together. It was super awkward because he just refused to really say anything of real substance. He was just like, oh, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to say. And it's like, it was heartbreaking because I've genuinely got along with this guy. I thought we were better than that, we were closer than that. So the whole thing was awkward. I'm not even gonna send him a message anymore because I'm like, we already kind of parted ways. I guess that's it. It was super awkward. So yeah, I get to the reception, turn in my badge to the receptionist, and I told her what's up, and like her face actually dropped. And she was just like, oh my god, I'm so sorry for you. All right, sorry, I got interrupted. But what was I? I think I was saying that, yeah, her face dropped and she was like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. Like, you could tell this girl genuinely, she was super upset about it. And then she said, you know what? Something like this has happened to me as well in the past, but I was actually at the time. I was just like, great. Good to know that this is like a thing that happens in this company, apparently. And yeah, I left. Now I'm unemployed, and the thing, oh my god. But the thing that just strikes me the most was obviously the way things went, but also just the fact that my colleagues were so cold about the whole thing. It really felt like all of a sudden I wasn't really part of their little group anymore, and I was like an outsider, and I was like a villain. And the person who ended up feeling bad for me was like the receptionist that I've spoken to like maybe 4 or 5 times during the time I was there, and like the people that I thought I was kind of friends with already shot me out completely. Yeah, that was heavy. And yeah, now the thing is, my birthday is tomorrow. My manager knew about this, but yeah, he literally, one of the things he said was, I know your birthday's coming, but I'm sorry. Like, you know what? No, I don't fucking need your apology, dude. Like, because I know you don't feel bad. The only, like, the whole tone of that entire conversation really made it obvious that he just wanted me out of there ASAP. Like, he could not stand being around me anymore. Like, he wanted me out. So whatever apology that he felt like he made, I know it's not real. I know it's insincere. I know he doesn't give a shit. He just wanted me out of there. And so yeah, that's kind of what ended up happening. I came home and I fucking, like, I started bawling. And then I had a headache for the rest of the night. It kind of sucked. But yeah, 4 months in. The worst thing is, like, my probation was going to be 6 months. And I'm like, you know what? The very least he could have done was to warn me now, 4 months in, give me 2 months to actually, you know, prove myself and change things. And then after 6 months, do another evaluation. But apparently, those 2 months were just too much for him. He just needed me out of there ASAP. And he even said, no matter how much time passes, I don't believe that you'll change. And I was just like, dude, you haven't even seen me. Like, in those 4 months, honestly, I haven't been able to prove myself. And the fact that he's like judging me and acting as if he knows everything about me, saying that I'm not creative and I won't change and I might not even belong in marketing. That sucked, dude. Like, it sucked. The whole thing was so unfair. And I know that it was unfair. I know that in a way, if I had a permanent contract, I would have legal grounds to, you know, not maybe sue them, but, you know, do something about this whole situation. But because I'm on probation, I don't really have any rights as an employee on probation. Yeah. It just, yeah, it sucked. And so that's kind of what I went through. It was really heavy. I still can't really believe that I got fired over something like this that I wasn't even made aware of. It was never communicated with me. Not like the phone thing was, but everything else wasn't. And I changed my phone habits. You know, I did listen. But yeah, it's just weird because, you know, like, people get fired for doing really fucked up things. You know, people get fired for maybe leaking company secrets. They get fired for, you know, like, completely misbehaving, stepping out of line. People get fired for just genuinely doing bad work over and over again. I get told that I do my job well, no complaints. But I didn't meet expectations that were never communicated with me. And then I literally get fired the same day without even getting to defend myself. That's the part that just, I can't grasp that. And yeah, the thing is, so many people have already told me, like, oh, it's okay, you're better off not being in that toxic environment. And it's like, that's true. You know, it was never my dream job to begin with, but the thing is, I just needed a stable job for about a year or so. Because it's been 2 years now, and this was my 4th job, and that shit looks really bad on your CV. And that's the thing I'm worried about the most. Right? Having to explain myself over and over again when I go job hunting again, because they ask questions about this. They do. So yeah, I don't know how I'm gonna tackle that one yet, but that's kind of the main reason it sucks. I just wanted to stay there for a little while, have some stability to make my CV look good, essentially. And now after 4 months, like, this guy really screwed me over big time. And I sincerely hope that someone at the company will point this out to him, because here's the thing that I also think is just so critical. The first month, I think, when I was working there, the CEO fired someone who from accountancy who had been working at that company, I think, for about 20 plus years or something. Like, he was a veteran, right? And they fired him because he wasn't a match with the rest of the team of accountancy. And I remember my manager felt so bad for the guy. He was like, "This is so unfair. You know, he's been working here for so long, and they fire him over like a dumb reason like that." And 3 months later, he does the exact same thing to me. Literally just fires me out of nowhere because I wasn't apparently like a match with the team for the reasons that I just said. I wasn't a match with him, not with the team, just not with him. He does the exact same thing to me, even though he felt bad for the other guy 3 months ago. Yeah, anyway, that's kind of what happened. I'll let you guys know what ends up happening with the streams and stuff because I need to figure things out right now. But for the time being, I'm still recovering mentally. It was a lot to suddenly take in. And yeah, keep an eye out on Discord stuff. And thank you to everybody who's reached out to me. Appreciate it. Like honestly, it's helpful to know that there are people who believe in you and see potential in you after this happened. So yeah, thank you for that. Bye.